Before the controversies, lawsuits, or headlines, there was simply a man and his uncanny ability to calm even the most unruly of dogs. Cesar Millan wasn't just a dog trainer, he became a household name, a symbol of control and calm in the chaos of pet ownership. But few know how far he came to earn that reputation. Born in Culiacan, Mexico, Cesar's journey to fame began long before he crossed the border into the United States. As a child, he was nicknamed El Perro, the dog boy, for his effortless ability to connect with the strays that roamed his rural village. His gift was undeniable. But it wasn't until he illegally crossed into California, with just $100 in his pocket and no knowledge of English, that Cesar's story truly began. Working at a dog grooming business, he quickly made a name for himself by handling aggressive dogs no one else dared approach. Word of mouth grew into whispers, and whispers into calls from Hollywood's elite. That's when a chance connection with Jada Pinkett Smith would catapult him into the public eye. She paid for his English lessons and encouraged him to dream bigger. That dream became The Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan, which premiered on the National Geographic Channel in 2004. The show was unlike anything audiences had seen. Cesar didn't use treats or baby talk. He used energy, body language, and what he called calm assertive behavior. Within a few short years, he became a global phenomenon. His brand expanded to books, dog products, training centers, and tours. By the late 2000s, Cesar wasn't just helping dogs, he was building an empire. But behind the calm demeanor and leash control, trouble was brewing. Some of Cesar's techniques, while praised by many, began raising eyebrows. Critics argued that his use of dominance-based training could be harmful and outdated. Animal behaviorists began speaking out, and soon, allegations of mistreatment, excessive force, and even dog injuries started surfacing. Still, his loyal fan base defended him, claiming that his results spoke for themselves. Yet the tension between Cesar's public persona and the controversies trailing behind him only grew sharper as the years went on. While fans celebrated his success, critics questioned the long-term effects of his methods and whether the dog whisperer was more showman than expert. But all of this would pale in comparison to what happened next. In the years that followed, Cesar wouldn't just face criticism, he'd be dragged into lawsuits, public backlash, and personal tragedies that would threaten to unravel everything he had built. The legal headlines would paint a very different picture of the man America once trusted with their most precious pets. And the biggest twist, it wasn't just his professional reputation at stake, it was his entire legacy. By the mid-2010s, Cesar Millan's image was everywhere. From best-selling books to dog food branding, his face represented a calm, confident solution to canine chaos. But behind the carefully constructed public persona, trouble was beginning to scratch at the door. The first major blow didn't come from angry critics or behaviorists. It came from a lawsuit that would put his entire methodology on trial. In 2012, Cesar was hit with a lawsuit that sent shockwaves through both his business and fan base. A woman named Allison Bitney filed suit after adopting a pit bull that had been trained at the Dog Psychology Center, Cesar's flagship training facility. Within just 6 days of the adoption, the dog reportedly attacked her, causing severe injuries. Bitney alleged that Cesar's team knowingly released a dangerous animal without warning her of its history of aggression. She required reconstructive surgery and claimed emotional trauma from the incident. The lawsuit brought intense scrutiny to how Cesar's training center operated and raised tough questions about liability. While Cesar wasn't directly handling the dog at the time, the case centered around his brand's responsibility, and his name was all over the paperwork. Suddenly, the man who was trusted to rehabilitate aggressive dogs was being accused of unleashing one onto an unsuspecting person. The headlines were merciless. Public reaction was split. Longtime fans doubled down in support, defending Cesar as a miracle worker being unfairly targeted. Others saw the lawsuit as validation of growing concerns that Cesar's techniques masked deeper issues. Either way, the damage to his reputation had begun. But that wasn't all. Around the same time, another lawsuit emerged, this one from a former employee. The details weren't just legal, they were personal. The suit alleged unpaid wages, unsafe working conditions, and internal dysfunction at the Dog Psychology Center. While it didn't gain as much media traction as the Bitney case, it chipped away at the image of a perfectly run empire. To make matters worse, television watchdog groups and animal welfare organizations were ramping up criticism. Some episodes of Dog Whisperer were flagged for showing potentially harmful methods, use of choke collars, leash jerks, and what one group called intimidation tactics. The pressure led National Geographic to release statements clarifying that Cesar's techniques should not be replicated without professional supervision. These legal and public relations hits weren't just bad headlines, they were costly distractions. They forced Cesar and his team to constantly defend the brand rather than focus on building it. Behind the scenes, insiders said the mood shifted. Once a place of energy and inspiration, the Dog Psychology Center became a fortress under siege. What was once a rising empire was now battling on multiple fronts: legal, reputational, and emotional. And yet, the worst was still to come. Because the lawsuits were just the beginning. The next scandal would reach deeper, right into Cesar's personal life, and the fallout would be nothing short of devastating. While Cesar Millan's public image began to crack under the pressure of lawsuits and growing criticism, an even more painful battle was brewing, one that had nothing to do with dogs, television, or lawsuits. It was personal. It was devastating, and it nearly broke him. Cesar had always projected confidence and control, especially on screen, but behind closed doors, he was struggling. In 2010, just before the lawsuits made headlines, Cesar's wife of 16 years, Cesar Millan, filed for divorce. The two had been partners not just in marriage, but in building the Dog Whisperer brand. Her departure wasn't just emotionally painful, it left a void in his support system and business. The emotional toll was enormous, but he kept it hidden from the cameras. Then came the unthinkable. That same year, Cesar's beloved pit bull Daddy, his loyal companion, and the dog who had become a symbol of Cesar's method, passed away. Daddy wasn't just a pet. He was an extension of Cesar's philosophy, calm, balanced energy that followers came to adore. His loss sent Cesar into a spiral of grief. But even that wasn't the final blow. Only weeks after Daddy's death of the divorce filing, Cesar's world came crashing down entirely. He attempted to take his own life. Cesar later opened up about that dark moment in interviews, revealing that the combination of heartbreak, stress, and grief left him in a place so hopeless that he didn't see a way forward. The image of the confident, unshakable dog whisperer didn't match the reality of the man who felt utterly alone and overwhelmed. For a man who had made a career out of restoring calm and balance to chaotic lives, his own was in complete disarray. Thankfully, Cesar survived. But the incident marked a turning point in his life and career. He checked himself into recovery, not just to heal physically, but emotionally. Therapy, meditation, and time with his remaining dogs became his way back. It was also during this period that Cesar began to rethink the role of his brand and message. This hidden chapter of Cesar's life revealed the human side behind the public persona. The trainer who always seemed to have the answers had nearly lost everything. And while some fans admired his vulnerability for speaking out about mental health, others felt the revelation came too late, after the damage had already been done. Yet, even in survival, Cesar remained under pressure. His career was still tied up in legal drama, and his critics weren't going anywhere. The scandals, the lawsuits, and the questions about his methods were still looming large. But Cesar wasn't done fighting. As he emerged from personal tragedy, he began plotting a comeback, a reinvention of sorts. However, the industry he once ruled with confidence was about to test him harder than ever before. After surviving personal tragedies, including his divorce and the death of Daddy, Cesar Millan faced the challenge of rebuilding not just his career but his reputation. He wasn't just battling critics. He was facing a media landscape that had become obsessed with tearing him down. The once-loved dog trainer now had to fight against accusations, rumors, and a tarnished image that seemed impossible to repair. In 2012, with his personal struggles behind him and his life starting to stabilize, Cesar made a public attempt at redemption. He launched a new television show, Cesar 911, which was meant to showcase his dog training skills and offer a new chapter in his professional life. The show was marketed as a comeback, an opportunity for Cesar to demonstrate that, despite his past controversies, his expertise and passion for helping dogs were still intact. At first, the show garnered attention. It focused on extreme cases of dog behavior, with Cesar called in to help desperate owners who couldn't control their pets. The show's premise was straightforward. Cesar's methods were the last resort for owners who had tried everything else. It played into the same formula that made The Dog Whisperer a hit. Cesar as the calm, authoritative figure who could transform any dog with his simple yet effective training methods. However, despite the promising premise, Cesar 911 couldn't escape the shadow of Cesar's past. The media was unforgiving, and the press remained fixated on the legal battles, the accusations, and the image of a man who had once seemed invincible, but was now deeply flawed in the eyes of many. Critics weren't shy about pointing out his past mistakes, with some even accusing him of being irresponsible for his behavior towards certain dogs on The Dog Whisperer. His critics saw him as nothing more than a controversial figure who had built his empire on gimmicks and controversial tactics. As Cesar 911 aired, social media exploded with both praise and scorn. Supporters argued that Cesar's method still worked, that his ability to connect with dogs was unmatched, and that his journey was one of personal growth. However, many were not so kind. Critics resurfaced old clips and accused Cesar of using outdated or potentially harmful techniques. His image as a confident dog trainer was starting to fray, and with each new lawsuit or legal setback, it seemed harder for him to regain the trust he had once enjoyed. Despite the negative media attention, Cesar remained determined. He even addressed some of the criticisms in interviews, admitting that his methods had evolved and that he had learned from past mistakes. But no matter how much he tried to present himself as a changed man, the damage from past controversies was still there, lingering like a cloud over his career. Some fans were still loyal, but others had already turned their backs, and the media's relentless coverage of his legal troubles made it hard for him to fully recover. Still, Cesar 911 wasn't the end of the story. Cesar's reputation may have taken a hit, but his journey wasn't over just yet. He was about to face one more challenge, a legal battle that would push him to the brink and force him to confront not just his past, but his future. By 2017, Cesar Millan was once again thrust into the public eye, but this time it wasn't for his dog training skills. It was due to a major lawsuit that threatened to take everything away. His reputation, his career, and his very livelihood were on the line in what would become a landmark case. The accusations were grave, and the court case would have long-lasting consequences on his future. The lawsuit came from none other than the dog owner of a pit bull named Lola. The claim was that Cesar Millan's dog training methods had led to a tragic event. Lola, after undergoing a session with Cesar's team, allegedly attacked and severely injured a child. The child was reportedly bitten multiple times on the face, resulting in serious injuries. Lola had been brought to Cesar's team for training because she had behavioral issues, but after a session with one of Cesar's trainers, she went into an uncontrollable state and attacked the child. In a world where public opinion could make or break a person's career, this lawsuit was catastrophic for Cesar. The details of the attack were shocking. Families were horrified, and critics of Cesar's methods jumped at the opportunity to highlight the dangers of his training techniques. It wasn't the first time accusations of aggressive behavior had been leveled against his methods, but it was certainly the most public and most damaging to his brand. Social media erupted with both anger and disbelief, and news outlets rushed to cover the story. For Cesar, the consequences of this lawsuit were far-reaching. The Dog Whisperer had already been off the air for several years, and his return with Cesar 911 had not been met with the same level of success. The last thing he needed was another scandal on his hands, but that's exactly what happened. The legal battle that followed was ugly, lengthy, and drawn out, with both sides accusing the other of negligence, incompetence, and even intentional harm. Cesar's team insisted that the attack was an isolated incident, and they pointed to the pit bull's history of aggression as evidence that Lola was simply too dangerous to be rehabilitated. However, the damage to his public image was undeniable. Lawsuits can drag on for years, and in the court of public opinion, the damage can often be done much sooner. Even if the lawsuit didn't result in a conviction, the press surrounding the case painted Cesar as irresponsible and dangerous, reinforcing the perception that he had no regard for the safety of the pets and people he worked with. Throughout the proceedings, Cesar maintained that he did everything he could to train the dog responsibly and safely, but the media wasn't letting go. Headlines screamed about Cesar's fall from grace, with critics labeling him a fraud who had gotten too famous for his own good. And while Cesar remained relatively quiet during the case, trying to stay out of the public spotlight, the damage was done. At the end of the day, the lawsuit was settled out of court, but the ramifications lingered far beyond the legal proceedings. The case served as a harsh reminder that for all his fame, Cesar's position in the industry was far from secure. Despite the legal battle and the media frenzy surrounding the pit bull attack, Cesar Millan refused to give up on his career. The years following the lawsuit were some of the most trying in his life, but he wasn't going to let this setback define him. He knew that in order to survive, he would have to rebuild his reputation, regain public trust, and prove that his dog training methods were still valid and effective. In the wake of the lawsuit, Cesar became more private, but he also became more vocal in interviews, aiming to clear his name. The world had seen him as the charismatic, confident dog whisperer who could tame the most unruly dogs. But now he was facing accusations of negligence, putting his credibility and future at risk. He knew that if he didn't speak up and offer explanations, his legacy would be in jeopardy. One of the ways he began to fight back was through his social media presence, which had played a major role in keeping his fan base engaged. For years, Cesar had used his platforms to showcase success stories, promote his dog training programs, and educate the public on responsible pet ownership. After the lawsuit, he doubled down on his outreach efforts, posting more frequently to share tips, insights, and updates about his personal life. He began focusing more on the positive impact his methods had on dogs and their owners, hoping to shift the narrative. His Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter accounts became more than just platforms for promotional content. They were a space for him to engage directly with his followers, answer their questions, and show that he still had the passion and drive to help dogs. In a way, it was his chance to humanize himself again, after the negative press made him seem distant and controversial. In addition to his online efforts, Cesar returned to television with a new show, Cesar Millan, Better Human, Better Dog. The show focused on the relationship between humans and their pets, with an emphasis on improving communication and understanding. The new show was not only a fresh start, but also a chance to highlight the positive changes in his life. His new show aimed to showcase how his methods had evolved over time, focusing on the psychological aspects of dog behavior, as opposed to his earlier emphasis on dominance-based techniques. However, it wasn't just his television work that kept him in the public eye. Cesar took to public speaking engagements and began hosting seminars to share his wisdom with fellow trainers and dog owners. These events allowed him to directly address any concerns and confront the allegations head-on. His goal wasn't just to prove that his methods worked, it was to restore trust in his ability to help dogs and their families. Slowly but surely, his reputation began to recover. His fans stuck with him, and his success stories continued to inspire people. While the shadow of the lawsuit would always loom over his career, it was clear that Cesar had regained his place in the dog training world. The road to redemption wasn't easy, but was one that Cesar walked with determination and resilience. In the midst of battling his legal troubles and attempting to repair his tarnished image, Cesar Millan was dealt a heartbreaking blow: the tragic loss of his beloved pit bull, Daddy. Daddy wasn't just any dog. He was Cesar's companion, his confidant, and a symbol of his unique approach to dog training. Daddy was, in a way, the heart of Cesar's brand and the dog that embodied his methods. Daddy had been with Cesar for over 16 years, and their bond was undeniably deep. The dog had appeared on many of Cesar's shows, acting as a living example of his training techniques. He was known for his calm, composed demeanor and his ability to stay calm around the most challenging dogs. Daddy was more than just a pet. He was Cesar's partner, his trusted assistant, and the face of his success. He had been featured in countless episodes, where his calm presence was a testament to the effectiveness of Cesar's methods. But in 2010, Daddy tragically passed away from old age. His death wasn't just a personal loss for Cesar, it was a blow to his career, coming at a time when he was already facing legal battles and public scrutiny. Daddy was not only a part of Cesar's personal life, but also a significant part of his professional identity. The loss of his companion left a hole in Cesar's life that he struggled to fill, both emotionally and professionally. Many saw Daddy's passing as a symbolic turning point for Cesar Millan. At a time when he was fighting legal battles and facing the criticism of his training methods, Daddy's death felt like a final chapter in a long and difficult period. But Cesar wasn't ready to give up just yet. He decided to channel his grief into his work, honoring Daddy's legacy by continuing the mission they had shared together, helping dogs and their owners live happier, healthier lives. However, Daddy's death didn't just affect Cesar emotionally. It had a significant impact on his public image as well. Fans and critics alike took notice of the loss, and many wondered how Cesar would cope with the challenge of continuing his work without his most famous dog by his side. The fact that Daddy had been an integral part of his shows meant that his absence created a void that could not easily be filled. Despite the overwhelming sadness, Cesar continued with his work, determined to keep Daddy's memory alive by carrying on with his mission. But the loss highlighted the emotional toll that came with Cesar's life in the public eye. It was clear that, while his professional life had been a constant battle for control and redemption, his personal life was just as complicated. Daddy's death was a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of resilience, not just in facing public criticism but in dealing with personal loss. The grief he experienced would be something Cesar would have to learn to live with, and it would impact the direction of his career moving forward. Following the loss of Daddy, Cesar Millan's personal and professional life seemed to spiral into a deep, dark period. The weight of his legal battles, coupled with the emotional toll of losing his best friend, caused a series of events that nearly derailed his entire career. But while many would have collapsed under the pressure, Cesar attempted to push forward, albeit not without struggles. By this point, his personal life was becoming just as public as his professional one. In 2010, Cesar went through a highly publicized divorce from his wife, Illusion Millan. The split was painful, and rumors about the reasons behind the breakup swirled in the media. Some speculated that the stress of his legal issues and the loss of Daddy had contributed to the breakdown of their marriage. Others pointed to the fact that the pressures of living in the public eye, especially as a figure like Cesar, could put enormous strain on any relationship. To make matters worse, the divorce became a media spectacle, with the press eagerly waiting for details about the couple's separation. Public speculation about the true causes of the breakup became just as fierce as the controversies surrounding his dog training methods. Was it the legal pressure? Was it the grief over Daddy's death? Or was there something more personal and private that the public was never meant to know? The stress of these personal struggles began to take its toll on Cesar's health. Reports emerged that he was suffering from severe anxiety and depression, which only further fueled the negative headlines surrounding his life. It was clear that this was a man who had lost everything in a span of just a few years: his dog, his family, and his once promising career. In 2012, Cesar was forced to publicly address his emotional health and the impact it had on his ability to work. He admitted that he had been battling depression, acknowledging the weight of his personal issues had nearly destroyed his life. He was overwhelmed by the loss, the criticism, and the relentless pressures of keeping his career alive. Despite the dark times, Cesar refused to give up. He pushed forward, even when it seemed like all hope was lost. This period marked the lowest point in his life, and though he was far from the spotlight, it would soon become clear that Cesar Millan was not going down without a fight. His deep connection with animals, his passion for his work, and his undeniable strength kept him going, even when it seemed impossible to move forward. This dark chapter would later become the foundation for Cesar's eventual resurgence. But it wasn't an easy road. The man who once inspired millions was now a symbol of personal and professional despair. In the aftermath of his legal and personal battles, many wondered if Cesar Millan would ever make a comeback. His reputation had been severely tarnished, and it seemed as though his career as a dog behavior expert was all but over. But Cesar wasn't one to quit, and while his path to redemption was difficult, it was nothing short of remarkable. The first major step in his recovery came in 2016, when he announced the return of his beloved show.
A producer advised, "We need to cut around the more aggressive corrections, particularly in Asia, where his approach faced less criticism." While he was ultimately cleared, the investigation cost over $200,000 in legal fees, and the investigation also uncovered evidence of multiple settlements.
He didn't just want to return to the public eye. He wanted to show that he had grown and learned from his past. He started taking a more holistic approach to his work, incorporating aspects of mental and emotional health into his dog training methods. This was a significant shift from his earlier, more strict and authoritative techniques. While still focused on discipline, Cesar's new approach included a deeper understanding of both the dogs and their owners. He emphasized the importance of emotional balance and the bond between dog and human, showing that healing was not just about training, but about connection. As his show gained renewed attention, so did Cesar's reputation. He began appearing at more public events, giving speeches, and participating in charity work. One of his most notable initiatives was his support for animal rescue organizations. His experiences with personal loss and trauma made him even more passionate about helping animals in need. As a result, Cesar became an advocate for abandoned and mistreated animals, using his platform to shed light on their struggles. Along with his professional revival, Cesar's personal life slowly began to improve. He managed to reconcile with some of his past relationships and slowly began rebuilding his family life, despite the years of challenges. This was a critical part of his comeback, showing that he was not just a public figure, but a man who had endured personal hardships and was now stronger because of them. Perhaps the most significant moment in his comeback came in 2019, when he launched a new Netflix series, Cesar Millan,
cracks, with several of his business ventures struggling to remain profitable.
Once again drawing millions of viewers and reaffirming his place in the public eye. But this time, it wasn't just about dog training. It was about showcasing his journey as a person, highlighting his growth and the lessons he had learned from his past struggles. Through all of this, one thing became abundantly clear. Cesar Millan was far from finished. His ability to rise above personal turmoil, rebuild his career, and reconnect with his fans was nothing short of inspirational. As Cesar Millan's comeback continues to unfold, the question remains, has he truly redeemed himself, or is he still the same controversial figure he was years ago? His journey has been one of the most dramatic rises and falls in the world of entertainment and dog training, and while many admire his perseverance, others wonder if his past mistakes will ever truly be behind him. One thing is certain, Cesar Millan's influence on the dog training world cannot be denied. He popularized concepts like calm assertive energy and pack leadership, which reshaped the way dog owners approach their pets. His show, The Dog Whisperer, educated millions of viewers on how to communicate with dogs, transforming countless relationships between pets and their owners. His techniques have been both praised for their effectiveness and criticized for their harsh methods, but they undeniably left a mark on the dog training industry. Yet, despite his achievements, Cesar's career has been clouded by controversy. His legal troubles, including the accusations of animal cruelty and the tragic death of his beloved dog, Daddy, raised serious questions about his methods and personal life. The legal battles he faced, including the high-profile lawsuit against him by former employee Jorge Garcia, cast a shadow over his public persona. In addition, the backlash he faced following allegations of mistreatment of animals, including accusations that his training methods caused harm to the very dogs he was supposed to be helping, tarnished his reputation even further. But throughout it all, Cesar has maintained his stance. He believes in his methods and his ability to help dogs. While he has made efforts to soften his image and evolve his approach, his critics argue that he has never fully acknowledged the harm that some of his techniques may have caused. It's a dilemma that continues to follow him. In recent years, Cesar's involvement with dog rescue organizations has been a major part of his redemption narrative. His support for abused and abandoned dogs is an important part of his personal story, and has allowed him to rebuild some of the trust he lost over the years. But does this make up for his past mistakes? Can a person truly be forgiven for the harm they've caused, even if they've changed and grown? The public's opinion on Cesar is divided. Some view him as a cautionary tale, someone who, despite his best efforts, can never fully escape the controversy that surrounds him. Others see him as an example of resilience and personal growth, someone who faced adversity and came out stronger on the other side. Cesar Millan's legacy, then, is a complex one. It is not just about the millions of dogs he helped or the fame he gained from his television shows. It's also about the questions he raised concerning the treatment of animals, the ethics of his methods, and the line between rehabilitation and cruelty. Whether he is ultimately remembered as a pioneer in dog training or as a cautionary figure is still to be determined.